So our target now is we have to derive the expression for the current in terms of the drift velocity. And let us take that same example very quickly. Enlarged view of the conducting piece connected to a external source of potential, which is a battery offering a potential of V volt. When we are saying that okay, this is offering a potential of V volt, that means this conducting piece AB is connected in parallel to the battery. Whatever is the potential offered by this battery, same should be the potential difference across this piece of conductor. V should be the potential difference. Is it necessary that this terminal I should take at the potential V? No, it is not compulsory. If I take this potential at V volt, this has to be 0 so as to get the difference of potential V volt. If I am taking this as 2V, then the difference of the two should be V volt, which is the potential offered by the battery. So in case if it is 2V, it has to be V. But one thing is clear, that whatever the value you are taking for A and B terminal, the difference should be V volt, and this should be the direction of the falling potential. This should be the direction of the falling potential. Okay, some few terms that we need to understand before we actually start with the derivation. Since current is total charge Q divided by total time. So let us obtain an expression for the total charge here. Assuming that n, small n, is the charge density, charge per unit volume. If I multiply this by the volume of this conducting piece, isn't that I am going to get the total charge? So it is charge per unit volume multiplied by the volume. I take the area here. Let me take the terminal to be A and small b, and let us take the area here, capital A, and the length of this wire is L. So what is the volume of this conducting piece? Volume of this conducting piece is AL. So this total becomes the total charge in this piece of wire. What was this small n here? Small n was the charge density, which is charge per unit volume. So if I was to get charge here, what I did, charge is equal to n into volume. This is what I have done here. So this has given me the total charge. So I'll take charge on the electron and divide it by total time. Let me take the total time in going from B to A as T. Let us take the parameter as T is the total time in going from B to A, time taken by the electrons. So electrons are going from B to A, taking the time T, covering a total length L. So what is this term here? What is this term here? Isn't it total length by total time? Either you take a small length by small time, or you take total length by total time. Isn't it the average velocity? And what is the average velocity, children? The average velocity we have just calculated, it is drift velocity only. Total displacement by total time is nothing but your drift velocity. So what does the formula become? This formula becomes NEA VD. This is a very important formula, children. I is equal to NEA VD. At times a 2-marker question is there in the board exam to derive a relation between current and drift velocity. So this is the formula. I is equal to NEA VD. I have not put vector sign anywhere since I am taking current here as a scalar quantity. But before this small portion, I explained that current is neither a scalar nor a vector, it is a tensor quantity, because the scalar addition rules are valid for the current, but since it is having a direction also, So saying that okay, current is purely a scalar is not correct, but that is beyond the limit of our syllabus in the class 12. So we'll consider that okay, current is a scalar quantity, but we need to justify the drift velocity, that okay, this is a vector quantity. So we need to make a small change here in the formula by just rearranging the terms. So let us see what change. So I is equal to NEAVD. This is the formula that relates current and drift velocity. We'll take this area here to the left hand side. So what it becomes, I by A is equal to NEVD. This term is called the current density. It is known as the current density and is defined by J. J is equal to NEVD. I can now justify, though current here was a scalar term, but dividing it by the area has given a new quantity, current density, which is a vector quantity. I'll put a vector sign here, I'll put a vector sign here, and now the equation is justified. J is equal to NEVD. Current density, vector quantity. Then what is the direction? Please note it down. The direction of current density is same as direction of flow of charge. Current density direction is same as the direction of flow of charge. Which charge? Obviously we are talking the conventional current, so we are talking the positive charge here. So if I am saying that okay, same example, let us take, this is a small piece of wire AB and this is the cross sectional area, which is say capital A, this is capital A, and the current here is entering this cross sectional area. Isn't that the current is entering perpendicular to the surface area? That is what my first requirement was, that electric current or the charge should move in an area perpendicular to the direction of the flow. So this current, which is there perpendicular to the area, current per unit area, which area? Perpendicular area. This is called the current density. Assuming that the area is not perpendicular, then what change are we supposed to do? Assume that I am given the area like this. This is the area. Now the current is entering this also. Of course, this is the direction of current here. Current is going the same way as it was going before. Now just look at this diagram. This is the area vector. I have to take the area vector, say it is a unit vector, the direction of the area vector. I have to take the direction of the area vector along the direction of the current, like it was clear here. Direction of the area vector was along the direction of the current. Same as here. If this angle is theta, isn't that this term should be A cos theta? This term should be A cos theta. And now if I just resolve the issue further, what will I get? That okay, current divided by area. Which area? A cos theta should be equal to the current density. Let us take the denominator, that side, rearrange the term, so it will be J A cos theta. So what it comes out to be? Isn't it the dot product? So it can be written as J dot A, which is I. Now this formula is actually well justifying the scalar nature of the current. I am now very much justifying, saying that okay, current here is a scalar term. It is the dot product of two vector quantities. Which are the two vector quantities? Current density and the area vector. This is a very important concept. Numerical might come in the board exams, so note it down carefully. Now children, one more thing I told you in the beginning that we are going to study the two Ohm's law statement. One was a classical and the second one is a modern. So we are at the first step of the classical statement of Ohm's law. What is that? Let us substitute the value of the drift velocity here. So what we'll get here, that okay, J is equal to ME. Drift velocity formula in terms of electric field is, so drift velocity expression in terms of electric field minus E, capital E, electric field, which is tau relaxation time, M, mass of the electron. Let us rearrange all the terms and see what we are getting. J is equal to N E square tau by M, and this is E, and there is a minus sign over there. Minus sign signifies that the current density will be directionally opposite to the electric field. Let us see the magnitude of the expression. So it is J is equal to N E square tau by M into E. This is an important formula. This term is written as sigma. J is equal to sigma E. J is equal to sigma E. This is known as the classical statement of what? Of Ohm's law. This is known as a classical statement of Ohm's law. J is equal to sigma E. J is the current density, E is the electric field. So once we have obtained the classical statement, this only will show us the path to the modern statement of Ohm's law. So let us obtain that, and for that we need to go back to this expression, the initial expression. So now we are coming to the derivation for the modern statement of the Ohm's law. We are going to start from the current density formula. So J is equal to current per unit area is equal to NE square tau by M, and electric field in terms of the potential. What can we write for the electric field? Isn't that electric field is equal to V by L, scalar form, V by L. Using that formula that we studied before, that electric field is having the direction in which the potential is falling. So let us substitute that value. It is V by L here. Take this side, so we'll get here, or let us rearrange the terms. So V is equal to M L A here, N E square tau, and this is I. So let us recheck. I hope it is correct. V is equal to, yes, I think it is correct. So this thing here is a constant for a given conductor. If the length is constant, area of cross section is constant, we are not allowing the excessive current to pass through the wire, so that L and A remains fixed. N is the number density, number of electrons per unit volume. I am saying that of course it is constant. For example, semiconductor, we just heat that piece of semiconductor, number of free electrons increases. I am keeping this fixed. That means I am not heating, I am not changing the temperature. That means we are maintaining the temperature and pressure fixed, so as to keep N and tau fixed, because N and tau both are temperature and pressure dependent. So keeping temperature and pressure fixed, what we'll say that okay, this term is a constant and this is denoted by R, and the formula that we obtained here is V is equal to R I, and this is the modern statement. One more thing that we need to understand, we are calling this a law, means that it is a universal phenomena, but the point is Ohm's law can be defeated also if we change the temperature and pressure. That is why when we are defining Ohm's law, we apply this condition. And how are we defining Ohm's law? We are defining Ohm's law as at a constant temperature and pressure, potential difference across a conductor is directly proportional to the current flowing across it. V is proportional to the current which is flowing through the conductor. This R value that we have defined, this R is ml over n square tau into, of course, A is there, and this vector is given a new name that you all have read in your 10th standard. R can be written as rho L by A. So this vector is rho. What is rho here? Resistivity. And just look at the formula, resistivity, isn't it? M by n square tau. And look at this formula for the sigma, n square tau by m, just reciprocal. Rho and sigma are reciprocal. It means rho, if we are calling that as resistivity, sigma is known as the conductivity. So here conductivity is reciprocal of resistivity. Rho is 1 by sigma. And from the formulation you can very well find out the SI unit for resistivity, SI unit, and the dimensions also. Let us spend some time on the SI units of the different quantities we have just introduced. First of all, rho here. So SI unit for the rho, what it should be? SI unit for the rho should be, SI unit for the resistance you all are aware of it, and this is 1 by meter goes here, so it becomes ohm meter. Ohm meter. This is the symbol for the ohms, SI unit of the resistance. SI unit of conductivity. This was for resistivity. Conductivity, since is reciprocal of resistivity, so the SI unit 2 should be reciprocal of this. So this will be written as, okay, the SI unit is 1 over ohm meter, and this is written as, the reciprocal of ohm is written as mho, and reciprocal of meter is meter inverse. So the sigma conductivity SI unit is mho per meter. Mho, you can check the spelling, just reciprocal of the ohm, and this is the way we define it. The SI unit for the sigma is mho per meter. This is defined as ohm meter, OHM, ohm meter, and this is MHO here for the conductivity. I think that is all about the different physical quantities. Yes, we should keep in mind this formula. We are going to study this formula when we are going to differentiate between the various materials. We can distinguish between conductors, semiconductors, and insulator. Let us now very quickly study the classification of materials. We are going to repeat this topic when we are going to study the semiconductors, but for the timing, since the formula is now available to me, it is sigma, which is conductivity, is Ne squared tau by m. N is a number density. Tau is the relaxation time. E of course charge on the electron, and m is the mass on the electron, mass of the electron. So let us see about the conductors. What will happen when we rise the temperature in conductors? So when temperature is increased, obviously we are going to release a small amount of the bound charges in the conductors also. That means we are going to increase, and more of the charges available, more of the electrons available, means that more of the collisions are there. That means lesser of the relaxation time available. That means tau will fall. This is what is going to happen, that when we increase the temperature, number density increases, and that ultimately will result in the decrease in the relaxation time. It is a time available to the electron in between two successive collisions. That means when n increases rapidly, collisions will happen very frequently. When the collisions are happening very frequently, that means the relaxation time will be very less, it will reduce. We observe that when we increase the temperature, fall in the relaxation time, it dominates. Of course both the things are happening side by side, but this factor, this fall in the relaxation time, dominates over the rise in the relaxation time. If this fall is dominating, look at this formula, if this fall is dominating, isn't it that this term will fall, this term will decrease? That means the conductivity will decrease. It implies that conductivity reduces, and since conductivity is reciprocal of resistivity, resistivity should rise with the increase in the temperature. I explain it once more. When we are increasing the temperature, we are increasing the density, number of electrons which are available. Say initially 5 electrons were there, and now after the increase in the temperature, 10 electrons are available. More of the random collisions are there. When more of the random collisions are there, that means they will get a lesser time to relax. Collisions will occur frequently, so tau will fall. So there are two terms that we need to analyze, and in the conductors, the fall in the tau is dominating. Fall in the tau dominates over the rise in the n. So when the fall is dominating, that means this entire factor is falling. That means here sigma 2 is falling, it is decreasing. Therefore sigma is decreasing here, and reciprocal is the term resistivity, that should rise. That means in the case of conductors, resistivity increases with the increase in the temperature. Let us come to the example of semiconductor. Here when we increase the temperature, same thing is going to happen, because here the bound charges are more, free charges are less. So when we are increasing the temperature, isn't it that of course we are increasing the number density, we are increasing the free charges, and when the number charges increases, of course the relaxation time is going to decrease, because that will result in ultimately more of the collision and lesser time for the charge to relax. But here rise in the n dominates. Rise in the n dominates. Let us go back to this formula. N is rising, it dominates, therefore the entire factor will rise, conductivity too will rise. So here conductivity increases, and since the reciprocal term is resistivity, should fall down. So in the semiconductor, on rising the temperature, conductivity increases. That is why when you are given a piece of semiconductor and you keep it over the furnace, then the conductivity increases. More of the current can be obtained from the piece of semiconductor. We will study this in detail in the semiconductor devices. What about the insulator? Insulator, we don't have any free charge. We don't have any free charge. That means N is 0 even if we increase the temperature. So initially N is 0, finally also N is 0. So look at this formula. Isn't that conductivity is 0? So in the case of insulator, conductivity becomes 0 with one exception there. That is the case of carbon. Let us study the difference between conductors, semiconductors, by plotting the graph. So when we are plotting the graph between the resistivity and the temperature, when we are plotting a graph between resistivity and temperature, we are taking temperature in Kelvin. The graph comes like this. That means at 0 Kelvin, the specimen, the conducting specimen offers certain resistivity. It is not zero, having certain value of the resistance that it is offering to the flow of the charges. So when we increase the temperature, it rises. About the semiconductors, the graph is falling exponentially. That means resistivity is maximum when the temperature is almost zero. When we increase the temperature, when we are heating the specimen, resistivity keeps falling, and at a very high temperature the resistivity is almost zero, negligibly small. That means the semiconducting specimen becomes more conducting when the temperature is increased. Resistivity falls exponentially. What about this graph? A simple one. There is no change in the resistivity, there is no change in the conductivity on the rise of the temperature. So we'll say that okay, a uniform graph for the resistivity. Whatever the temperature is there, resistivity remains same, and at a particular temperature, of course, the insulating piece, for example wood, that starts to burn. So we'll stop our graph a little earlier. Okay, one more thing, I think we should study it here only. When we are studying the graph resistivity versus temperature for conductor, there is a formula that governs the variation of the resistivity with temperature, that governs the resistance variation with temperature. If resistivity temperature graph is like this, then resistivity or resistance temperature graph should also be like this. And the formula that governs the variation of the resistance with temperature or resistivity with temperature is RT is equal to R naught 1 plus alpha T. It is some final temperature, original initial temperature 1 plus alpha T, and this alpha we call as the temperature coefficient of resistance or temperature coefficient of resistivity. Instead of R you can write on rho also, the formula stands valid. So here alpha is temperature coefficient of resistance, and in your lab you have done the experiments like meter bridge and the potentiometer. There we take the wire constantan or manganin in the meter bridge and the potentiometer experiment. At times in the board exam the question may be asked that why are we taking constantan or manganin for the construction of the meter bridge and the potentiometer. See, for the meter bridge and the potentiometer and for any such appliance, I want that whatever the temperature I change, their resistance should not change much. There should be the minimum change in the resistance. So what we say that okay, the value of alpha should be minimum. So for constantan or manganese, the value of alpha is minimum. That is why we take constantan and manganese. For copper, the value of alpha is not minimum, it is having certain specific value. That means there is a remarkable substantial change in the resistance, therefore we don't use copper. Okay, that is it in this class of current electricity. We have done certain graphs also which distinguish between the conductors and the semiconductor. In the next class we'll study the combination of the resistances and the cells, and in the last we are going to wind up the chapter with potentiometer and the meter bridge. So that's all in this class.